Welcome back to The Paper Pursuer. Today's show notes are for episode 1194, and it was titled The Media is Spreading Hysteria. So the first article is from the Washington Examiner, Pete Buttigieg, Ending a New Era Presidential Campaign, by Emily Larson and Joseph Simonson, March 1st, 2020. Pete Buttigieg is ending his Democratic presidential bid. The 2020 Democrat is set to return to his home state on Sunday night, where he is expected formally to announce the end of his White House campaign, aides confirmed. Buttigieg, the youngest candidate in the Democratic presidential field at 38, skyrocketed from the nationally unknown mayor of South Bend, Indiana, to a top-tier candidate in the Democratic presidential field with the help of an aggressive go-everywhere media strategy. His unique biography, a gay, married, Midwestern millennial Harvard graduate, say that 3 times fast, and Rhodes Scholar who served as an intelligence officer in Afghanistan with the Navy Reserve, piqued the interest of voters and reporters for months. Narrowly winning the Iowa caucuses against Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and finishing a close second in the New Hampshire primary wasn't enough to give Buttigieg the momentum he needed to compete in the remaining Democratic contests, however. By the Nevada caucuses in late February, where he placed third with just over 17% of the vote, it became clear that his base of support wasn't going to expand. In South Carolina, Buttigieg placed a distant fourth with 8% of the vote, despite spending an enormous amount of time and resources trying to court black voters. One of his key fans, former President Jimmy Carter, told reporters that the candidate doesn't know what he's going to do after South Carolina. On Sunday, Buttigieg hinted in an interview with NBC that his campaign might soon be coming to an end. Every day we are in this campaign is the day that we have reached the conclusion that pushing forward is the best thing we can do for the country and for the party, he said. Although his campaign ended with rather abruptly with 2 poor finishes, Buttigieg remained a competitive candidate for months despite starting with nearly zero name recognition and a bare-bones campaign. By mid-2019, he was a fundraising force and beat the rest of the Democratic presidential field in donations from April through June. But as he rose in national polls, he struggled to secure support from minority voters, who make up a majority of Democratic primary voters in some key primary states and are an important voting bloc for Democrats in general elections. The killing of a black man by a white South Bend police officer over the summer sparked protests and compounded his problems. Rival candidates went on the attack by the end of the year, with Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar suggesting Buttigieg's mayoral experience was not enough to be president, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren slamming him for hosting a high-dollar fundraiser in a wine cave. Oh my gosh. Buttigieg campaigned on leading a generation of American leadership. Early in his campaign, he presented bold proposals such as eliminating the Electoral College and expanding the number of Supreme Court justices to 15, but rarely mentioned those ideas later. He towed the line between liberal and centrist, declining to support far-left ideas rivals presented, such as a wealth tax or eliminating private health insurance in favor of a single-payer Medicare for all plan. He's a fence-sitter. He was hoping to just ride along and everyone like Mayor Pete. It's a fool. Not surprised he's gone. I guess he's going to just try to hop in and be part of someone's campaign if they were possibly to have a Democrat win. So I'm going to do one more article on this video, hopping over another Washington Examiner article. Supreme Court to decide fate of Obamacare, elevating healthcare as election issue, by Kimberly Leonard, March 2nd, 2020. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case that could result in all of Obamacare being thrown out, bringing the future of the law to the forefront as a central campaign issue. The decision to take up the case, announced on Monday, before the resolution of litigation in the lower courts, will give Democrats ammunition with which to attack Republicans on the issue of health care. President Trump has not provided a backup plan for the law, which increased the number of insured by 20 million should it be invalidated in court. Did not drop 20 million people. What's it, 1 million who are actually able to use it? The Trump administration, which has told courts that the entire law should be thrown out, had asked the justices not to take up the question of the constitutionality of the law until the lower courts were done litigating the matter. Trump has been focusing his healthcare rhetoric on attacking Medicare for all, a plan championed by Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders that would enroll everyone living in the United States into a government plan. Democratic leadership in Congress has been squarely focused on defending Obamacare, a strategy it believes helped hand the party the House during the 2018 midterm elections. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation poll shows that the law, formerly known as the Affordable Care Act, is more popular than ever, with 55% of voters viewing it favorably. Democrats have sought, in particular, to advertise the law's rules that prohibited health insurance companies from turning away the sick or from charging them more than healthy people. For Americans who care about saving their health care, especially protections for Americans with pre-existing conditions, the Supreme Court's decision to hear the case is a stark reminder of President Trump's determination to end those protections, because any Democratic president would immediately drop this heartless Republican lawsuit. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York said in a statement. 4 justices are needed to take up a case. The timing of the oral arguments hasn't yet been announced, but it's possible they would happen just ahead of 2020 elections. While it's not yet clear whether a decision would land before Election Day, Trump's Democratic rival would be able to argue that the president is working to take away the law's protections for pre-existing conditions. If the law were to be thrown out, not only would millions lose insurance, but other popular policies would also end, such as the provision allowing for children to stay on their parents' plan until age 26. The case in question, Texas versus Azar, is the result of a lawsuit by Republican state officials who said that Obamacare must be struck down on the grounds that it lost a critical component when the 2017 GOP tax overhaul zeroed out the healthcare loss fine on the uninsured. Republicans who had the support of the Trump administration said the fine had been central to Obamacare and that the rest of its provisions would not work should not stand without it. Judge Reed O'Connor, who was appointed by President George W. Bush, agreed with the GOP states, but the case was appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. On December 18th, the appellate judges ruled 2-1 that the health insurance mandate was unconstitutional, but that the rest of the law needed further analysis by the lower courts to see whether some parts could be separated out and others could not. The 20 liberal states, along with the District of Columbia that are defending Obamacare, had urged the Supreme Court to take up the case this term, saying that leaving it undecided left too much uncertainty for patients and healthcare providers. Our health is the most precious resource we have. We should all be working to improve healthcare instead of ripping coverage away from those most in need, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said of the Supreme Court's decision to take up the case. As Texas and the Trump administration fight to disrupt our healthcare system and the coverage that millions of people rely upon, we look forward to making our case in defense of the ACA. American lives depend upon it. Several medical and consumer groups, including AARP and the American Diabetes Association, agreed that the case should be taken up before litigation in the lower courts was final. In a statement, the American Hospital Association pressed for an expedited review, which would land a decision ahead of the election. We'll see how that goes. All right, that's it for now, and I'll be back in a bit with a couple more articles. Thanks, guys.